Have you ever found yourself thinking, it's not worth it, let it go, I'm better than this? How often have you held your tongue, silenced your truth, or buried your anger just to keep the peace? We've all done it, but here's a hard truth. Every time you do that, a small part of you disappears. From the moment we're young, we're trained to avoid conflict. We're told that maturity means staying calm, that being kind means being quiet, and that walking away is somehow stronger than standing up. But that's not always true, in fact, sometimes. It's a lie. The philosopher Nietzsche saw this with raw clarity. He noticed something we often miss, that what we call virtue is often fear in disguise. Fear of confrontation, fear of being unloved, fear of being seen as difficult, dramatic, or selfish. But when you keep avoiding conflict just to make others comfortable, you're not being peaceful, you're disappearing into yourself. You're swallowing your own voice. Nietzsche called this slave morality, a belief system born from powerlessness. When people couldn't fight back, they created values that rewarded silence, humility, and obedience. They turned submission into a virtue, and over time that became our standard of good behavior. But let's pause, really pause. Ask yourself, how many unfair things have you accepted just to keep things calm? How many times have you bitten your tongue when you knew you needed to speak? How often have you allowed disrespect to slide by just to avoid being called difficult? This isn't a call to pick fights or become confrontational. That's not the point. It's about reclaiming your right to exist without shrinking. Because if you don't, if you keep burying your discomfort, something inside you starts to decay. Resentment grows, and one day, it either explodes painfully or it numbs you into silence, into apathy. And that's when you start believing that to be good is to be harmless, to be small, to be quiet. But here's the good news. There's another way. Nature and Nietzsche offer us a different path. One where conflict isn't your enemy. It's your compass. It points you toward the places where you've been silenced, ignored, or forgotten, even by yourself. In this video, we're going to explore Nietzsche's powerful insights about the fear of confrontation, why you feel it, how it still shapes your life today, and how you can finally break free. Not by fighting everything, but by learning to face what you've been running from. Are you ready for some uncomfortable truths? Then stay with me, because what we're about to explore could permanently shift the way you see conflict and, more importantly, how you see yourself. To understand why confrontation feels so terrifying, you have to look deeper, not just into your own memories or past traumas, but into the long, buried history of human morality itself. And few have done this with more brutal honesty than Friedrich Nietzsche. In his work on the genealogy of morals, Nietzsche uncovers a raw, unsettling origin story behind our values. The moral compass most of us carry today didn't rise from wisdom or compassion, but from weakness, resentment, and the need for the powerless to protect themselves from the powerful. Picture a world where strength ruled. Warriors, rulers, and noble individuals didn't hide their desires. They didn't apologize for their confidence. They acted, they claimed, they imposed it. Their morality was alive, it was bold, proud, and unapologetically affirmative. To them, goodness meant strength. It meant courage. It meant living on your own terms, not in fear, but in full expression of power. But not everyone could thrive in that world. There were others, the weak, the overlooked, the angry. Those who lacked the strength to fight or the will to impose. So they flipped the script. They couldn't win by force, so they won by inverting values. What was once seen as noble, like pride or assertiveness, became sinful. And what was once survival, like obedience or submission, was renamed as virtue, not because it was morally better, but because it was necessary. Nietzsche called this slave morality, a morality not born of life-affirming energy but from fear, from a deep internal no to power, to desire, to strength. It taught people that retreat is wise, that passivity is noble, that humility is holy, even if it meant hiding your real self. And here's the uncomfortable part. This isn't just ancient history, it's still alive, right now, inside you, around you. You hear it in the way you were raised. Don't argue. Don't be difficult. Be nice. Keep the peace. Since childhood, many of us were trained to believe that confrontation is bad and submission is moral. So every time you bite your tongue to keep others comfortable, every time you hide your opinion to avoid tension, you're acting from slave morality even if you don't know. But here's the key. This doesn't mean you're naturally weak. It means you were taught to fear your own strength. You were taught that being a good person means being harmless, that taking up space is selfish, that setting boundaries is rude, that speaking up makes you difficult. And this conditioning, it creates a deep psychological trap, one that millions fall into. The fear of confrontation becomes a fear of your own power. You start calling it maturity, but often it's just fear in disguise. And the more you avoid it, the stronger that fear grows. But there's another layer to this story, and it's darker. Because all the anger you repress, it doesn't disappear, it sits there inside you, fermenting. And what it turns into is something far more dangerous than anger. Resentment. And that is where we're headed next. You'll learn how resentment fuels quiet passivity, how it slowly poisons your confidence, and how it drains the life out of your relationships and your inner world. So don't stop now. The hardest truths and the most freeing ones are still ahead. If this is resonating with you, take a second to subscribe to the channel. It helps support the work and make sure you never miss what comes next. Now that we've seen how the morality of submission shapes our fear of conflict, let's take a deeper look at one of the most corrosive emotions it produces: resentment. Nietzsche was a master at dissecting the human soul, and few of his insights cut as sharply as those on resentment. In On the Genealogy of Morals, he describes resentment as a twisted response to blocked energy. It starts with a vital impulse, the urge to speak, to act, to set boundaries, to claim your space. But when that energy is stifled, when you can't act, it doesn't vanish. It turns inward. And instead of becoming expression, it becomes poison. The resentful person is someone who wants to say no but swallows it, wants to draw a line but hesitates, wants to push back but freezes. So instead of action, they build a story, a moral story, one that justifies their silence. I'm better because I don't react. I'm nobler because I forgive. I'm stronger because I rise above it. But if we're honest, that's often a lie. Behind that mask of moral superiority lives a quiet, constant rage, a frustration that never found its voice, a sadness that never got to scream. And even if you don't say it out loud, you feel it. You know it. You feel it when you lie awake, replaying a conversation, whispering all the things you should have said. You feel it when someone disrespects you and you smile politely, only to carry the bitterness home. You feel it when your boundaries are crossed again and again and you pretend it doesn't bother you, but it does. That is resentment. Nietzsche warns us the resentful person isn't just a victim. They are, in a way, an accomplice to their own imprisonment. By refusing to confront what needs to be confronted, they help build the very cage they want to escape from. And here's what makes it worse. Resentment feeds on itself. The more you avoid conflict, the more bitterness builds. And the more bitterness builds, the harder it becomes to speak up. It's a vicious cycle, one that leaves you sinking into a quiet sadness, a slow-burning anger that eats away at your confidence. Over time, many people don't just feel resentful, they become resentment. It becomes their identity. They see themselves as noble sufferers, martyrs for peace, but deep down they are just afraid. Afraid to be seen, afraid to be heard, afraid to be powerful. But Nietzsche didn't believe we were doomed to this fate. He believed there was another way, a path of transformation, a way to reclaim the strength we've been taught to fear. And at the heart of that path is one of his most profound and misunderstood ideas, the will to power. Now let's be clear, this doesn't mean domination or control over others. That's a shallow misreading. What Nietzsche meant was something deeper, a life force, a natural drive within every living thing to grow, to expand, to become more. It's the energy that pushes a seed through the soil, that makes a child explore the world with wide eyes, that inspires humans to create, to invent, to evolve. The will to power is the flame that says, I am here, I want to live fully. But the morality of silence and submission tries to extinguish that flame. It tells you, don't speak too loudly. Don't want too much. Don't shine too bright. Don't be dangerous. It wants you to shrink, to conform, to vanish in the name of safety. When you repress your will to power, it doesn't vanish. It festers. It turns inward into resentment, into passivity, into quiet self-pity. To reclaim your power, you must reconnect with that vital force you were taught to fear. It means letting go of the illusion that submission is virtue. It means understanding something essential. Life is conflict. And facing that conflict consciously, honestly, is not aggression. It's an act of self-respect. So, how do you begin? First, recognize that your fear of confrontation is not noble. It's not a personality trait or a sign of wisdom. It's a learned limitation, one you inherited but no longer need to carry. Second, start small. Learn to say no without apology. Learn to draw lines clear and kind. Reclaim your right to take up space in the world. Third, build the courage to face the inevitable tension of life with open eyes. Not to fight others, but to stand as yourself. Because here's the truth. The will to power is not about controlling others. It's about finally refusing to be controlled. It's about walking through life with integrity, with your head high, with your soul unchained. But Nietzsche knew this shift doesn't happen overnight. It's not a quick fix. It's a deep inner transformation, a shedding of false virtues, a rebirth. And to describe this rebirth, he gave us one of the most beautiful metaphors in all of philosophy. The three metamorphoses of the spirit, from the camel to the lion, and finally to the child. That's where we're headed next. You'll see how to stop being the camel, the one who silently carries the weight of everyone else's expectations, and become the lion, the one who dares to carve out freedom. And then, even beyond that, the child, the creator of new values and a new life. In his work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche lays out the three stages of spiritual transformation: the camel, the lion, and the child. But this isn't just a poetic image, it's an existential map, a guide for breaking the inner chains most of us never knew we were wearing. Let's begin with the camel. The camel is the spirit that bears weight, the expectations of others, the pressures of society, the moral rules we were told to obey. It bows its head and carries the load. You must obey. You must be humble. You must avoid conflict. You must swallow your anger. The camel says yes to everything. And in a way, the camel is strong, strong in its ability to endure. But that strength is hollow. It's the strength of survival, not creation. Worse still, the camel starts to take pride in its suffering. The more it submits, the more it believes it's being virtuous. Sound familiar? Many people live their entire lives in this stage. Maybe you recognize part of yourself in it too. But Nietzsche didn't stop there. He believed there comes a moment, a sacred moment, when the camel's spirit revolts. It gets tired of bowing. It gets tired of hiding. It hungers for freedom. That's when the camel becomes the lion. The lion is the spirit that finally learns to say no. No to roles that diminish. No to rules that suffocate. No to the inner voice that says, don't speak. Don't stand up. The lion embodies the awakened will to power. But the lion's fight isn't senseless. It doesn't destroy just to destroy. Its struggle is sacred, a fight to create space. Space to exist honestly without shame. To claim your space, the lion must face its final opponent, a terrifying force Nietzsche calls the dragon of thou shalt. This dragon shines with 1,000 glittering scales, and on each one is written a rule. Thou shalt be meek. Thou shalt submit. Thou shalt avoid conflict. To defeat this dragon is no easy task. It demands courage. You'll face disapproval, criticism, rejection. You'll wrestle with the guilt planted in you since childhood, the guilt that told you it's wrong to speak, to want, to fight. But this struggle is necessary, because only when you learn to say a real, conscious no do you finally step out of the prison of quiet submission. And then, something beautiful happens. You become the child. This is the last metamorphosis, the spirit reborn. No longer burdened like the camel, no longer defensive like the lion. The child is light. The child is free. The child no longer reacts, it creates. This is where true strength lives. In joy, in self-chosen values, in the ability to say, I don't need to fight you. I just need to be me. Conflict in this stage is no longer a battlefield. It becomes a canvas, a space where you assert your truth not by defeating others but by living authentically. This is the rebirth Nietzsche offers. But to reach it, you must pass through fire, the fire of confrontation. You must cross the desert of rejection and self-doubt. You must break fully and finally the chains of fear that keep you small. And this leads to the most important question of all. Who are you really behind all the fear, the masks, the silence? Nietzsche gives us a powerful answer in Ecce Homo, a simple but profound call. Become who you are. It sounds like an invitation, but it's also a challenge. Because becoming yourself is not easy. It's not automatic, it's not gentle, it's a battle. And the first battle is against the fear of conflict. Ask yourself, how much of your life have you lived for others? How many decisions did you make to please someone else, even when it hurt? How often have you silenced your truth just to avoid discomfort? Nietzsche shows us. This is the trap. Not loud, not obvious, but quiet and deadly. Most people never become who they are. They perform, they adapt, they wear masks, chase approval, follow roles. And every time they swallow their truth to keep the peace, a small part of them fades. Every time you say yes when your soul whispers no, you drift further from yourself, because the fear of conflict is not just emotional, it's existential. Conflict is where identity is forged. It's through friction that we learn who we are, what we value, what we believe, what we desire. Without conflict, there is no clarity. Without clarity, no authenticity. Without authenticity, life becomes an empty stage, a performance without a soul. So if you truly want to live fully, you must find the courage to face what scares you most. Not to destroy others, but to discover who you are. And then, to become it. Saying no to other people's expectations. Saying no to the roles that were never truly yours. Saying no to your own urge to shrink just to feel accepted. But there's more. Nietzsche reminds us that this path isn't about following a new set of rules. It's about realizing there is no blueprint. There's no universal morality to copy, no ready-made version of who you're supposed to become. You must create it, your own path, your own values, your own way of living, and that's terrifying. Because without the rules of the herd, you are alone, and at first, that solitude hurts. You lose applause. You lose the illusion of security, but what you gain is infinitely more powerful, the possibility to live with integrity. Each conflict you face with awareness is a step toward yourself. Each boundary you draw with clarity is an act of freedom. Each time you speak your truth, even if your voice shakes, you take another step away from fear and toward authenticity. Nietzsche doesn't promise comfort. He offers something greater, the chance to live a life that is yours, truly, deeply, unapologetically yours. But for that, there's one uncomfortable truth you must face. Silence is not always kindness. Sometimes, silence is complicity, and that's where we end this journey. Let's talk about the silence you've been taught to see as virtue and how it might actually be feeding everything that hurts you. You've made it this far. Now it's time to face what many avoid. Your silence has a cost. How many times have you told yourself that it was wiser to stay quiet? That raising your voice wouldn't help? That letting it go was the mature thing to do? And yet, how many times have you swallowed your pain, your humiliation, your boundaries, in the name of keeping the peace? Here's the hard truth. Every time you stay silent in the face of injustice, you are not neutral. You are reinforcing it. Your silence teaches the world how to treat you. It says, I accept this. It says, this is okay. And slowly, those patterns of domination and disrespect start to feel normal, both in your life and in the world around you. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He knew that a morality built on fear doesn't lead to peace. It leads to a slow erosion of the soul. When you choose silence to avoid confrontation, you're not building a safer life. You're building a quiet grave for your will. And the world? It notices. People can feel when you're afraid to speak up. And some, especially those acting in bad faith, will take advantage of that. The silence you think protects you often exposes you. Every unspoken boundary is an open door. Every unspoken truth is a space where lies can live. Nietzsche teaches us this. Living authentically requires courage, and courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you act anyway, with fear in your chest but truth in your voice. Conflict, when it matters, is not chaos. It is the moment your integrity takes shape. It's where you show the world and yourself that you have a spine, that you have values, that you have limits. So next time you feel the urge to stay quiet, pause and ask yourself honestly, am I being wise or am I just afraid? That one question could change everything. Because becoming who you are will never happen in complacent silence. It happens in the fire of confrontation, in the hard, necessary moments that carve your soul into shape. You were never meant to be an eternal camel, forever carrying the weight of others. You have within you the lion, the strength to say no. And you have within you the child, the courage to create a life that is fully your own. But this journey doesn't begin with comfort. It begins with action, and it begins now. If any part of this spoke to you, if something stirred inside you, I want you to leave a comment below. Type, I choose to no longer remain silent. Write it, say it, own it, because putting it into words, Maudit, is already a powerful first step. And don't stop here. This is just the beginning. The next video will help you go even deeper into this transformation, to take what you've learned and turn it into something real. See you there.